Imagine this. You just spent years, head down in your studies, poring over textbooks, nailing every single exam. You're feeling pretty good, right? Ready to take on the professional world. But then you hit that first interview, or maybe it's your first big team meeting at work, and suddenly it's not just about what you know. They're asking about how you collaborate. Can you take the lead? How do you communicate when things get tough? Can you solve problems creatively? It's all about those vital soft skills.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Employers everywhere, I mean, it seems almost universal now. They're really looking for graduates with strong soft skills. Things like communication, taking initiative, motivation, leadership, huge demand. But here's the tricky part. Traditional university courses, brilliant as they are for academic stuff, often, well, they struggle. They don't always give you structured ways to really develop these skills. So if you're a university wanting to properly prepare your students for the real world, what do you actually do? How do you bridge that gap?
Well, what's really fascinating here, I think, is how one university didn't just talk about this problem, they tackled it directly, with a pretty remarkable solution, actually. This deep dive is all about a really compelling case study. It's from the University of Lapland up in Finland. They specifically designed this unique facilitator-led course. The whole point was to cultivate these crucial employability super skills in their graduate students.
Right. And the core innovation, the thing that came out of this course, led to something they call the SES model. So our mission today is to really dive deep into this SES model. What exactly is it? How does it function day to day? And maybe most importantly, what kind of impact did it actually have on the students? We're basically looking at a potential blueprint for turning academic achievement into genuine real-world readiness. It's not just a feeling people have. The data really backs this up, the soft skills gap. There's research from folks like Binsate and Kinash showing this rising demand from employers for skills beyond just the technical know-how. But then other research, like Urson's work, points out that traditional academic settings often just aren't set up to provide those hands-on chances to build these skills. It does create a real challenge, doesn't it? You can be academically top-notch but feel, well, a bit lost when it comes to the teamwork and dynamics of a modern workplace.
That's exactly the gap the SCESS model was built to address. At SSS, it stands for SkillCraft, a curiosity-enhanced employability super skills. And the name's quite deliberate, I think. It emphasizes crafting skills, actively building them, not just passively receiving information. At its heart, SES is really built on this powerful foundation of experiential learning. It's about learning by doing, by trying things out, experimenting, interacting, getting your hands dirty, basically. And crucially, reflecting deeply on what happened, why it happened, what you learned. This whole approach is designed to foster student autonomy. So students aren't just, following a recipe, they're actively driving their own learning.
That part about minimal teacher intervention, that sounds a bit, well, maybe counterintuitive. You'd think developing complex skills like leadership or communication needs a lot of direct teaching, constant guidance maybe.
Yeah.
How did they make sure students weren't just, left completely adrift in that kind of environment? How do you foster initiative by stepping back? Seems tricky.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's less about being adrift and more about having carefully designed scaffolding around them. The real magic is in the structure they created. It guides the learning process without actually dictating the outcomes. It pushes students into that space where they have to take ownership, where they need to step up, communicate, figure things out together. It's really about cultivating a mindset shift, seeing learning as something active, something you direct yourself.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. What did this journey actually look like for the students? It wasn't just a one-off workshop, was it?
No, not at all. It was structured in two quite distinct phases, designed to build on each other. First, there was a 3-day intensive workshop series, really hands-on, and that was followed by a much longer, month-long group project where they applied what they'd started learning.
Right, and you mentioned it was developed through Educational Design Research, EDR.
Exactly, which means it wasn't just designed once. It went through 2 full cycles, getting feedback, being tweaked and refined based on what actually happened with the students. That makes the final model pretty robust.
Okay, so phase 1, those first 3 days, what was the vibe? What were they actually doing?
It was definitely high energy, very active. The goal was deep engagement right from the start. Each day involved hands-on tasks, specific time set aside for reflection exercises, and really important peer feedback sessions. But what made it particularly effective, I think, were the specific pedagogical models they wove into the activities. Not just theory, but practical tools. For example, one core tool was the 4Rs model. It stands for repeat, refer, review, reflect. Students use this every day for their written reflections. It's like a structured way to process experience.
Okay, break that down a bit. Repeat, refer.
Sure. You repeat what actually happened in the activity. Then you refer it back to any relevant theories or concepts may be discussed. Then you review your own actions or your group's performance. And finally, you reflect on the key learnings and what you might do differently next time.
Ah, okay. So it forces a deeper level of thinking than just, that was interesting.
Precisely. Turns experience into learning. Then they also use the divergent explore convergent model. This is great for tackling problems or creative tasks.
How does that one work?
You start wide divergent thinking, brainstorming all sorts of ideas, even wild ones. Then you explore a few of the more promising avenues in more detail. And finally, you converge on the best solution or path forward. It encourages both creativity and structured decision-making.
Nice. And you mentioned something about group dynamics.
Yes, they use the Integrated Model of Group Development, or IMGD. This basically gives students a map of how groups typically form and evolve the stages they go through, like forming, storming, norming, performing.
Ah, I've heard of those stages.
Right. Understanding that helps them navigate the inevitable challenges of teamwork more effectively. They can sort of see where they are in the process. And then there was the feedback structure. This was really powerful, I thought. Very simple prompts, just what I like about you is, and what I want to see more in you is. Sounds very direct, but positive too.
Exactly. It frames feedback constructively, it focuses on reinforcing positive behaviors and suggesting specific areas for growth, rather than just criticism. It really helps build that interpersonal awareness in a safe way.
Okay, so let's walk through those days. What were some of the actual activities? Day one.
Day one kicked off with something called the apple task. And no, it doesn't involve eating apples.
Okay. What is it then?
It's a classic, simple group task designed to immediately surface interaction styles. You give a group a seemingly simple problem involving, well, apples usually, and just observe who speaks first, who organizes, who listens, who generates ideas. It gets those initial group dynamics and leadership tendencies out in the open right away. Low stakes, high insight, sets the stage perfectly.
Interesting. Okay, day two.
Day two brought in the Paperclip Creativity task. Again, sounds deceptively simple.
Just think of uses for a paperclip. Pretty much. But the goal is to push beyond the obvious, to really stretch creative thinking and appreciate different perspectives. And we have a great quote from one student, S15, reflecting on this. They said, I found it very interesting to see that everybody had a different view when they gave their thoughts about the use of paperclips. This was a reminder for me that every person is different.
Wow, yeah. That's a big takeaway from such a simple object.
Isn't it? It highlights that value of diverse thinking in a team. Also on day two, crucially, the students actually co-created their own criteria for evaluating group work.
Oh, that's clever. Gives them ownership.
Absolutely. And they got some basics on facilitation skills too, empowering them early on.
At day three, the final workshop day.
Day three culminated with the Lost at Sea group survival simulation.
Ah, the classic lifeboat scenario. Rank the items in order of importance for survival.
Exactly that one. It's brilliant for putting decision-making, negotiation, and leadership styles under a bit of simulated pressure. Really shows how groups handle disagreement and consensus building when the stakes feel higher.
Yeah, those can get quite intense.
They can. And after that, they had a final reflection session covering the whole workshop, and then received a detailed briefing for the big project phase that was coming next. And just to loop back to that minimal intervention point throughout these 3 days, the facilitator's role was very intentionally restrained. They weren't lecturing, they weren't jumping in with answers. Their input came mostly during those structured reflection times. They'd offer theoretical links or pose questions based on what the students themselves were saying and observing. It was responsive, not directive.
So the learning was really driven by the students' own experiences and their discussions about them.
Precisely. That was key to fostering that sense of autonomy and self-discovery.
Okay, so they've had this intense 3-day boot camp, basically, built some foundations, gained some self-awareness. Then what? Phase 2 begins. This is the month-long project, right?
Yeah.
Where they were more independent.
Exactly. After the workshop, the groups transitioned to working on a collaborative challenge they chose themselves. And these weren't just made-up problems. They selected challenges from OpenIDEO.
OpenIDEO.
Yeah.
That's the platform where real organizations post real-world problems they need help with, isn't it?
That's the one. So students were tackling genuine, current issues, things like sustainability challenges, community problems. It adds a whole layer of relevance and motivation.
Yeah, I bet. And you said they had full ownership.
Complete ownership, planning, leadership roles within the group, managing their time, figuring out the deliverables. It was all down to them. The facilitator really stepped back here. Now, they weren't completely cut off. There were 2 scheduled process meeting days during that month with the facilitator.
What were those for? Checking up on them.
Less about checking up, more about process consultation, helping them troubleshoot teamwork issues, guiding their planning process if they got stuck, offering support, but not telling them what to do for the project itself.
Got it. Scaffolding again, but lighter touch.
Exactly. And then day 6, which was effectively the final day of the whole course, was project presentation day. They presented their solutions or findings, and importantly, this wrapped up with a specific termination phase.
Termination phase. Sounds a bit final.
It's about structured closure for the group, a chance to acknowledge the work, the challenges, the successes, and exchange final feedback. It ensures they don't just drift apart, but properly conclude that collaborative experience.
Right, makes sense. Now, with something this different, figuring out if it actually worked is crucial. How did they measure the impact?
They were really thorough with data collection, used multiple methods to get a rounded picture. They had the students' written reflections, all that group feedback exchanged using the prompts. They conducted individual interviews after the course, and the facilitator kept detailed observational notes throughout.
So looking at it from all angles.
Pretty much. It allowed them to track skill development, things like communication, leadership, problem solving across the different phases and activities. The feedback collection was particularly key. Those daily 4 Rs reflections submitted by email gave a running commentary on individual learning. And the peer feedback using what I like about you and what I want to see more was consistently applied. We saw examples like student S8 reflecting, I would like to focus on building trust first through communication when it comes to working with new people. That shows real self-awareness emerging from that structured feedback loop.
Yeah, that's quite specific.
And remember, the students co-created their own group evaluation criteria back on day 2. That meant they were evaluating each other against standards they'd all agreed on, which adds real weight. The process meetings provided facilitator check-ins, and then the voluntary post-course interviews gave insights into longer-term takeaways. All this qualitative data reflections, feedback, interview notes was then carefully analyzed. They looked for recurring themes.
And what kind of themes emerged?
Things like creating a supportive environment, the importance of inclusive leadership, and this strong sense of emerging autonomy among the students. These themes lined up really well with the intended goals of the SCESS model.
And you mentioned this wasn't static. They actually refined the model based on the first run-through.
Yes, that's the EDR process in action. They learned from the first iteration and made 4 key changes for the second cohort.
What were they?
First, they allocated more dedicated time for that structured peer feedback. They clearly saw its value. Second, they put even more emphasis on group responsibility during the project phase, making it clearer that the groups were truly in the driving seat. Third, they worked harder to clarify the difference between focusing on the process, how they work together, versus just the final content or outcome of the project.
The how versus the what. Important distinction.
Very. And fourth, they formalized that structured termination phase at the end for better closure and final reflection. And these weren't just minor tweaks. The researchers reported that these changes led to noticeably deeper student engagement and significantly better quality feedback being exchanged in the second iteration. It really shows the power of that iterative educational design research: framework, design, test, analyze, refine. It builds a much stronger, more effective learning experience over time.
Okay, this is fascinating. Let's talk about the student experience itself, because emphasizing autonomy, minimal intervention, you could go sideways, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I can imagine some students initially feeling a bit lost, maybe thinking, just tell me what to do.
Oh, absolutely. And the reflections show that. Some students definitely found the open-ended nature challenging at first. There's a great quote from student S13 who reflected, "Today I learned that I am not used to being able to work freely in a group. I am used to clearly defined boundaries and clear roles."
Wow, that's incredibly honest, recognizing your own comfort zone like that.
It is. It shows that initial discomfort when faced with genuine independence. But that discomfort is often where the real learning starts, isn't it? And the key finding is that students did adapt. It wasn't instant, but over the course, they gradually moved past that initial uncertainty. They reported feeling more confident, communicating more effectively, and really taking ownership of their learning. It was like a muscle getting stronger with use. And they consistently pointed to the reflection activities and the peer feedback as being absolutely crucial catalysts for that growth.
So it wasn't just about surviving the ambiguity. It was about learning from it. with the help of structured reflection and peer input.
Exactly. They weren't just told how to be better communicators or leaders. They figured it out through doing, reflecting, and getting feedback.
Do we have any other examples of that kind of growth?
Yes, definitely. On confidence, student S5 shared something very relatable. I feel nervous in pressure situations, but in the end I felt better. I should work more on my confidence and sharing ideas with others without the fear that my idea is bad.
You can almost hear them processing that experience and setting a goal for themselves.
Right. It's active learning in action. And another one, S3, S9, had this insight about their own leadership style. I am not a volunteer when it comes to leading. I only take leadership roles when no one else is willing to take a lead in the group.
That's deep self-awareness, understanding your own tendencies. You probably wouldn't get that from just reading a chapter on leadership styles.
Unlikely. It comes from being in the situation, observing yourself, and reflecting on it. That's the power of the experiential approach. And importantly, the facilitator's observations back this up. They noted that by consciously stepping back, they saw a deeper engagement emerge. They saw more genuinely collaborative dynamics within the groups. It really validated the whole student-centered philosophy. It showed that trusting learners with autonomy within a well-designed structure can lead to more profound learning outcomes, not fewer.
So pulling this all together, what's the big takeaway for someone listening? What does the SCESS model really offer? It seems like it offers a really practical, tested way to embed these crucial soft skills development right into higher education. Is that fair?
I think that's exactly right. It's a compelling blueprint. It shows that through combining immersive, hands-on experiences with very structured reflection and that strategic, minimal facilitator role, you can genuinely cultivate skills like autonomy, communication, leadership, collaboration.
It proves these aren't just fuzzy concepts. They can be actively developed.
Yes. It offers a method, a scalable method perhaps, to bridge that gap we talked about, the one between academic smarts and being truly ready for the complex, collaborative nature of modern work. And thinking bigger picture, the implications are quite significant. It prompts the question, how can we integrate similar experiential reflective models more widely across different disciplines?
Right, not just in specific skills courses, but maybe within engineering projects or healthcare training.
Exactly. The potential is there. Future work could look at adapting SES for different contexts, maybe even exploring digital or blended formats to make it more accessible, and conducting longer-term studies, tracking graduates to see the lasting impact on their careers. It's about continuously improving how we prepare people, not just for their first job, but for lifelong learning and leadership.
So a final thought maybe for you listening. Think about your own experiences, whether in learning or in teamwork. Where could an approach like SES really emphasizing that autonomy, structured reflection, and honest peer feedback unlock new levels of skill or confidence or just understanding for you or your team? Something to definitely mull over.